So the purpose of the humanities PhD,
Well, that's a big question.
it's a difficult question to answer. Most important purposes or contributions that the humanities PhD can make is to produce people who can question things.
Doing a PhD is about contributing to our understanding of the world around us. I think I'd like to think that's true of all disciplines, and that's the goal. And I know we all want to know where things we do lead to, but we can't lose sight of the reason one should be doing a PhD is to advance human knowledge. And it's nice when that leads to employment. But those are secondary things.
Very stereotypical answer would be to further knowledge and try to better understand the world as it is right now. But I think realistically, although I think a lot of us are here to do that, it's also tied to a career. It also translates into being able to land a job. The main challenge from my perspective is the lack of discussion around other viable options that you can do with the PhD after you finish, other than going into academia. As a student, no one has actually talked to me or some of my other colleagues about other opportunities or how to actually set yourself up for those other opportunities if plan A doesn't work out for you.
I received the advice that if there was anything that I could imagine doing besides academic work, anything at all, I should do that. If a PhD was the only possible thing that I could imagine myself doing, then she would write me a reference letter, then I should do it, right? So it was like, if you can think of anything else, do that thing first. And that was the advice that I received. So I don't think that I went into graduate study with any illusions about whether or not it was a good life choice, but I thought that an academic career was what would allow me to do the most fulfilling, the most meaningful work. That was honestly what I believed. And now I'm, halfway through a doctoral program, and there are days when I still believe that, and there are days when I don't.
How do we get people out there to recognize the skills that our students have? How do we get our students to recognize that their skills are have applicability beyond an academic context? How do we teach them to market themselves? How do we teach ourselves to teach them to do these things, since we have no experience within the academy?
The biggest challenge is probably just making sure that the PhD is relevant in today's job market. It's fairly easy to end up setting up a PhD program so it is relevant for the academy and getting a job, say as a tenure track professor or working as an instructor somewhere at a college or a teaching university. But not everybody can get those jobs, so we need to make sure that it's relevant for people getting research jobs elsewhere, so that they end up so they're not too eclectic and have an incredibly amount of specific knowledge that isn't relevant elsewhere. They need to have the skills that they can end up applying to working for government, working for NGOs, or doing consulting work if they're able to do so.
I would not like to see major changes to the PhD. I think it's a fool's game to try to all of a sudden turn our graduate students into marketable products. Trying to guess what the job, trying to guess how to train people for the job market you're always going to lose that, because the job market changes far more quickly than we ever can. But there are certain things that we do really well, that in all of our programs, I think, like certain core skills that students have, certain values, certain just ways of thinking that they take with them out of the university that will always be able to meet whatever changes happen outside of the university.
And what's sort of needed now are just examples of what people have been doing. I can think in my own field, there are a number of people who are pursuing rich, valuable, money-making, viable careers that aren't strictly in a tenure track job, but they're contributing greatly in some ways to the discipline still, by bringing the discipline to a wider audience, to the public, by applying their thinking skills to a variety of problems. I think those people are out there. I think we need to showcase them.
You never know exactly what's going to end up being useful. So some people will complain about spending money on the humanities and saying on how, or the social sciences for that matter, and studying things that don't matter anymore, historical movements or certain writers and what have you. But you never know how that knowledge can end up being used.
It's like one of the things that I'm really curious about, that I want to ask other students about, is why are you actually here? Like, if we could come up with a list of things that we want to do with our lives, say, and we have a kind of belief that academic work will allow us to do those things, can we pool resources and think of other kinds of work or other kinds of involvement that would create those same opportunities?
As a View has sort of prided itself on being the engaged university, so it already lots of efforts to connect research into the community. So we are the place this should happen, I think.